is the right time to stand up for freedom? Could it be when you start to feel creating children who'll inherit the pain and the debt of this nation and be slaves to the banks that cause hyperinflation, who are masters of commerce, lies, and bad legislation? Whoa, if you looked in the eyes of 1,000 young children through fences of razors, their innocence stolen as the red flag of tyranny flies in the open, is that when you finally notice? Whoa, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and they say I can't change all the things I find strange, for what can one man do alone?
Welcome back to the Liberty Test, the show where we take government policy at its word before we put it to the test. I'm your host, Dan Castello, and tonight Robert Schuon is here, and also the spicy Rose Leatherman returns. And we have a special guest, Paul Grindle, political director of the Libertarian Party of New York. We'll be focusing the Liberty Test this evening on the part of our platform that really matters, and the one that often gets the least attention. This is Section 5, which reads, "Government will inevitably grow more tyrannical if left unchecked. It is essential for citizens to be vigilant in defense of their freedom and sovereignty. Therefore, it is the responsibility of citizens to actively restrain the government, its powers, and its agents from subverting the rights of the people." Those are bold words, but they're empty, frankly pathetic, if all we do is complain on social media. So tonight's question is, how exactly do we hold government accountable? What does it mean to actively restrain the government, its powers, and its agents from subverting the rights of the people? Well, there are multiple answers to that question, some more peaceful than others, and I'm going to give you a few peaceful examples to maybe inspire a little hope in these less and less peaceful times. And then we're going to put this approach to the test with Paul's help and the rest of the panel and find out if we can pass our own Liberty Test. But first, here are those examples of what I'm talking about. In 2023, Governor Hochul proposed the New York Housing Compact, a plan that would have stripped local communities of their zoning authority and handed it to a state-appointed board in Albany. If your town didn't approve enough housing projects to meet state-mandated quotas, bureaucrats you never voted for could override your local planning decisions. This wasn't a proposal to incentivize housing construction. This was a mandate backed by the threat of state takeover. So what happened? Town Supervisor Don Clevin in Hempstead became one of the most visible organizers against it. He gathered over 20,000 signatures on a petition and coordinated with supervisors from Huntington, Oyster Bay, North Hempstead, and across Long Island. They organized rallies, they lobbied legislators, they testified at hearings. They got 200 elected officials from both parties on record opposing it. And in May 2023, the Housing Compact died. It's pulled from the budget. Complete defeat. Albany backed down. That same year, Oneida County Executive Anthony Picenti, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, faced a different kind of overreach. New York City, dealing with its own migrant housing crisis that it largely created, decided to solve the problem by shipping migrants upstate and telling counties like Oneida, "You'll house them, you'll pay for it, and you'll like it." Picenti said no. Not, "We need to have a conversation about this," just no. He issued executive orders blocking the transfers. When New York City sued, the courts ruled that any cases against upstate counties would be heard in those counties, not in New York City's friendly home court. Local officials forced the state and city to slow down, justify themselves, and fight on unfriendly ground. And more recently, in New York City, when the now former mayor tried to ram through a citywide upzoning plan that would have erased long-standing neighborhood protections, who pushed back? Not advocacy groups, not think tanks, not people posting on Facebook. City council members from Staten Island and other outer borough districts representing communities that chose lower density living pushed back against blanket upzoning proposals that would have overridden neighborhood character and long-standing property expectations. They used their leverage in council negotiations to carve out exemptions and slow proposals that would have imposed one-size-fits-all density mandates on communities that didn't want them. Now, here's the thing. None of these people are libertarians. Donald Clavin isn't reading Rothbard, and Anthony Picenti probably couldn't quote our platform. And those New York City Council members, not libertarians either. But every single one of them was doing exactly what Section 5 of our platform says. They actively restrained government, its powers, and its agents from subverting the rights of the people. And they could do it because they were in the positions that mattered. Town supervisor, county executive, city council member. When the state came knocking with its mandates and overreach, these people had the authority to say no, and the platform to organize others to say no with them. So that raises a really important question, maybe the question of our movement. Does this show that our system actually works? Because I can think of three competing answers. The first answer is yes, the system works if you use it. Local officials can push back against state overreach. They can organize effective resistance. They can protect their community's rights. The problem isn't that the mechanisms don't exist. It's that libertarians aren't in those positions using them. We're too busy arguing on Twitter about whether voting violates the NAP, while statists fill every planning board, zoning commission, and village trustee position in the state. The second answer is barely. Sure, Long Island stopped the housing compact in 2023, but Hochul came back with the Pro-Housing Communities program. The state keeps trying different versions of the same overreach. Even when you win, you're just buying time. You're fighting rearguard actions, slowing the inevitable, but not actually rolling anything back. It's managed decline at best. Now, the third answer is no. The system is designed to absorb and neutralize resistance. You get to testify at hearings, file lawsuits, organize petitions, vote. You feel like you're fighting back, but the structural incentives all point toward centralization. The courts defer to Albany, the legislature ignores local opposition, and eventually people get tired and the bureaucrats win by attrition. Resistance is theater. You're performing a role while the machine grinds on. But tonight, Paul Grindle is going to make the case that the first answer is correct. He's developed an initiative to get liberty-minded people into hyper-local positions, village trustees, planning boards, zoning commissions, where they can actually do what Don Clavin and Anthony Picenti did, just at a higher level, where they can be the people saying no when Albany comes calling. And we're going to test that theory. We're going to ask, is this a viable strategy for defending liberty, or are we just rearranging deck chairs? Is Paul offering us a real path to restraining government, or is he selling false hope? Because Section 5 of our platform doesn't say citizens should write strongly worded blog posts. It says we have a responsibility, that word again, responsibility, to actively restrain government. And if the answer is that the system is too broken for office holding to work, well, then we're talking about those other less peaceful answers. But first, let's find out if the peaceful ones still have a chance. So, Paul Grindle, after that long-winded monologue, welcome to the Liberty Test. I gave some big examples in that opening, town supervisors, county executives, stopping major state initiatives, but I know your plan is more modest, more targeted. So let's start there. What exactly are you proposing people actually do?
Well, my plan is a little more modest to start. The reason it's more modest is, I think, pretty simple. It's as you said. Right now, libertarians are not in those positions. Unfortunately, there's not enough contesting of those positions. We don't really have a bench. We don't have a long-standing history of repeat success contesting locally. And somehow at the same time, there's a level of local, even more local than a town supervisor, which has usually a lower barrier to entry, that I believe would be valuable for us to be focusing on, and that is at the New York State village level of municipal elections. I think that the village level's low vote totals, not just win totals, but vote totals overall, yet strong capacity to impact local decisions, especially in villages with strong corporation charters, allows for a direct and clear way for libertarians to get in those local positions like you were describing before. And I believe that the LPNY, and especially local counties, should prioritize trying to compete where we currently can to make that impact and to show people the value of what happens when you elect a libertarian.
So basically, the joke about libertarian dog catchers is kind of what we're talking about. And hey, you actually could do something with that position. You could refuse
100%.
to enforce dog registration, which is pretty dumb when you think about that. Why should I have to get a license to have dogs? Or for things like school board, which is important. Maybe you could restrain the school from, for example, in my town, spending millions of dollars to acquire a golf course that they decided they wanted for some reason. I don't know why the school needed to buy a golf course, but here we are, and our property taxes go up every single year to fund things like that. You're muted.
Yeah, that's wild.
So can village level government office holders, like village trustees, actually resist the state?
Yes, although to be forward, it depends on your village and your village's incorporation charter. Different villages have, I guess you could say, devolved different amounts of the town. This is not uniform, and as we're going to find out over the course of this discussion, very few things about villages and village processes across the state of New York are uniform. So it's definitely worth understanding if you live in a village and are looking at this concept, what exactly your village can and cannot do. Unlike towns, which are pretty clearly established as concepts from statute, each village has its own separate charter with its own concept of what the residents wanted that village government to be created to be able to regulate. And so I don't want to pretend like everyone's going to have the same experience, but yes, absolutely. I would say more than dog catcher, although, it depends on what a dog catcher can do. Is are dog catchers in your town going after people who allow their dogs to walk without a leash because they say it's a dangerous to the neighborhood character? There's I don't know. So I would dismiss local.
It depends on
I would just say be mindful.
Area too. Like upstate and downstate are very, very different. Because like on Long Island, you have large villages like Brookhaven or large towns like Brookhaven or Babylon that have a lot of villages that are tied into it. So, for example, Babylon has Deer Park, it has North Babylon, it has the village of Babylon itself, it has West Babylon. There's so many pieces to it, and a lot of it is really administered from the center of the town, and how much the village is able to do is uncertain. Upstate may be a lot different because the Long Island government is quite different, and the city, of course, is completely different. Like that's, the boroughs are not really villages; they're almost their own towns and have their own administration.
So that begs the question, what does a village trustee actually do? I know different villages will be different, but can you give us an idea in general of what you would be doing if you found yourself, a village trustee?
A village trustee is essentially a legislator for your village. It is the village equivalent of being on your town council. A village can probably this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but they can probably be best understood as if a hamlet of your town incorporated itself to have its own devolved powers from the town. And so, whatever those devolved powers are, the legislation that would come forward, maybe it's about a zoning approval, like you were talking about before. Maybe it's about a local ordinance about whether you can hang up your clothes on your clothesline or whether that's a violation of neighborhood character. In your village, many times those will be decided at the village level, not at the town or county level. And so if you're a village trustee, you can have the ability to vote no. I think that power is important, even though it is different, as Bob rightly pointed out, between different areas and different villages. You also may find that perhaps your village has more power to say yes or no on things, but because the people in your village board are oftentimes put there by the same machine that might control your town, it might not have mattered for a while that your village could do something because it's all run by the same machine.
Now, I hear that many of these races are uncontested, which would mean that there's nobody running to oppose the person who's already holding the office, right?
Yeah, that happens a decent amount of the time. It's there are plenty of contested and plenty of the fake contested where there's someone on the ballot, but they always lose like 70-30 because it's a red or a blue village. But yes, a lot of village trustee elections, they do go uncontested.
So the person that's in that position probably tends to get pretty comfortable. So
yeah, exactly.
Some competition is probably a good thing.
Well, if you wanted to compete, what is the process? I mean, I assume it would be different in different villages and, places, but just broadly speaking, is it like a thing where you collect signatures, and is that realistically achievable for, normal people?
The process is this: if you want to get yourself on the ballot and you're not part of the major parties, is largely similar to the process that you would use if you were running for any other office. There are different signature count requirements. They're usually a lot lower than for the town level. Not always, because they do determine off your village size, but it usually is a lot lower. The deadlines are different for most villages, which they have a sheet from the New York Conference of Mayors outlining what most of those deadlines are. And you usually submit it to the paperwork to your village clerk rather than your county board of elections. Again, not all the time, but it's usually the village clerks that run the village elections. And that should give you a sense of how devolved some of these powers to the villages are. That
actually sounds
villages,
really...
who all have choice of whether or not they want to let the county board of elections.
That sounds really doable. Can you give me a sense then of the timeline? Like what would we be targeting now? It's January. What's the realistic path from now in January to libertarian candidates on ballots in villages?
So there's 4 usual times that a village might have their election: March, June, August, November. The majority of them are March and June. To petition for March village elections, that window for what are considered independents, who are us right now, because we do not have a New York State recognized line. That window has already started, and it goes until about February 10th. If you're talking for the June elections, those are all the way, the petitioning period for those are all the way in May. It's a little further out. August has usually the same petitioning period as the June. The August village elections are pretty much intended mostly for Hampton-ish areas. Every village decides their own election date. And usually the Hampton ones decide somewhere near August to try and allow all the rich people to come back and vote. And then there's some upstate counties who have decided to do their village elections in November, in which case you're talking a regular petitioning schedule, just like any other town, city, county, whatever.
So what if you don't live in a village? How could you help somebody get into a village trustee position?
So there's a few ways you can help. Because right now, the LPNY is starting up a research project on the dates and frequencies of the village elections of every village in all 62 counties of the state of New York. This is a bit of a large undertaking because there is no centralized database of this anywhere. I actually spent a considerable amount of time talking with the Board of Elections and their records department about this question, and they told me straight up, yeah, this probably should exist. We'd love it if it did. Good luck. That's what I was told directly. They were very nice about it, but they were clear, no one has done this. Perhaps it exists in a major party, so if you want to leak your major party's village election information, love to see that online. But until that day happens, LPNY is researching this information, and we need bodies to do the relatively easy but slightly time-consuming process of going through and identifying this information for every village.
How does that work? What would I do if I wanted to?
So if you wanted to assist us with that, first thing you would do is reach out to us so that we can help coordinate with you. I'm going to be the point person for that for now. So reaching out to me would be great so that I could get you plugged in. But what that process looks like is taking a county and then taking the list of villages in that county, which is provided by the New York Conference of Mayors. They don't provide the election dates, but they do provide the counties. Then you go and you start researching the names of the villages and any news articles you can find about their elections. Usually, if you can find a news article about village elections, it'll oftentimes have multiple villages listed in that news article. Many times you can get the entirety of all the villages that had elections, say March elections, in a single article. But if you notice when doing that research, finding that news article, that there are villages missing from that list, you could then go to those village websites and then search to see if their village calendar has the election in it. If it does not, you search. If there is a village proclamation, which they often will make about when the next election is and who's up for election. Sometimes you may have to search in their meeting minutes to see if they've approved such a thing. They might not have it for every year. You might have to go back a few years. So it's a little bit of a scavenger hunt, but that's basically what you'd be doing to fill up all the columns in our giant super Excel sheet online for the villages of a county.
So wait, people all over the state could do this. You don't have to physically be in a village or even go to it. Anyone could help.
That's exactly the point of this. There are many villages in the state of New York, but the state of New York is majority not village. So this process, to be able to do it successfully, will need people who are not in villages to help us with the research of finding the village election dates, the village election frequencies, what positions are open when, and to help us with getting registered libertarians who live in those villages to be willing to run for those offices.
Ah, it sounds almost like a pilot or a training ground that you could scale up later, like proof of concept to attract candidates, build networks, and then you
Get
could
people
move up.
used to the political process, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah, get them experienced.
I
Build
have
them
a
Now-
question about okay, how does Hochul's new law about no off-year elections affect all of this? Because now we don't have an election in 2027 because New York State basically canceled them.
My understanding, and that's a really good question. I'm going to have to double check this, but so this is about a 70% sure answer. My understanding is that it didn't apply to village elections because village elections have a separate part of the election code from all other elections, and that they're specifically devolved to the villages. They may have changed that, in which case what that would mean is that there still needs to be research about which villages have elections when, but it does become a little bit easier to find out when the village elections are, but a little tougher to get people to care about the village elections because if they're on an even year, then everyone's focusing on the federal election
Federal, state.
spectacle. Yeah, they're focusing on the big dramatic positions that you need to burn millions and millions of dollars to be even in the conversation for, which is they're made by design to be controlled by the elites. So there's pros and cons to that law. I'm reasonably sure it does not affect village elections, but that is worth double checking on, and thank you for flagging it.
Also, so does this really mean that the Board of Elections does not really control these elections? Like, how do they administer them if it's, if it's not the Board of Elections doing it?
The village clerks will administer the elections unless they ask or enter an agreement with the Board of Elections of the county to have them administer the election. That's why it's so difficult to track on all this information is that for many boards of elections at the county level, what happens is they just get information sent to them from the village, and unless it looks like flagrantly wrong or like has some form of alarming thing that they have to ask the village about, they just have to accept it. It's a village.
I had no idea villages had this much autonomy.
Yes, it is one of the few parts of New York State government that, in my opinion, still respects the concept of home rule. Not perfectly. They continue to crush or attempt to crush home rule any way they can in the state. But this is one of those rare areas where autonomy does seem to be preserved, at least for now. Give them time.
What protects village governance?
But to what?
What protects village governance? From state preemption.
Or county or town.
Yeah.
For county and town, what protects it is the state law that recognizes the concept of incorporated villages. What protects it from the state is basically the fact that they haven't done anything yet to change those laws. Unfortunately, my understanding is that there may be some form of complicated legal kung fu a village could do if its rights get violated by a change of state law, if they can argue some constitutional angle because they have an agreed incorporated charter. Maybe there's some legal genius, like, I don't know, maybe Jim Ostrowski can talk something, but the reality is that it basically is a function of state law, to my understanding.
So we're allowed to exist in villages because we're so small they don't really notice us yet. But if your strategy works and it starts to grow an actual libertarian movement, how quickly do we have to grow to be too powerful to stop before they notice us?
Before they can change the state law.
Well, like I
The
think,
biggest issue is state and county preemption laws, but that actually kind of brings me to what I wanted to ask. Like, so I think the question is going to be like, how much can we actually do at our village level? Do we have the ability to nullify unjust county or state or even federal laws if, for example, we can just refuse to enforce certain policies? Like, is that a realistic goal?
It's, I don't
I
know.
think
Not sure if anybody even knows the answer to that question. I mean, to an extent, federal law is going to override, and so state law. But
But
it's
state
an
and
enforcement,
federal authorities, like they pretty much require the cooperation
right?
of local authorities. So if you have local authorities just not obeying instructions or enforcing policies, there's only just so much they can do. That they can show up and make examples out of certain locations and certain people, but they're not going to be able to project their power without the people at the local level helping them. So I guess my question is like, how viable a strategy is this for helping people get out from underneath unjust policies that are making their lives more difficult?
so. I have, I guess, a mixed and complicated opinion on that, but it's definitely just an opinion because this hasn't been tried yet. So it's a best guess. My best guess is that it's if you're talking the question of like villages existing and having the degree of autonomy that they currently have on paper, that's probably going to be tougher for the state to officially remove because how many villages exist currently and how many of them, it's hundreds, and how many of them have residents that just have these expectations that you're just allowed to make a village if you want. That's like that removing that expectation, I think, would be a lot tougher of a sell. What they could attempt to do if you try a nullification strategy is try and send state troopers would be tough. They can barely pull that off in New York City, but they might, try to put pressure on a county government this who might have like a police department. Like take Suffolk as an example. Suffolk County has its own police department. There are towns that also have their own police departments, and then villages that also have their own security forces. But if you Suffolk is really mad at a village for refusing to comply with some rule, they can try and do a show of force by bringing in the police or bringing in the sheriffs. I think that it'll be mixed results basically because it'll depend on the local power structure, how much the residents are serious about resisting. Because you as a libertarian can get elected and vote however you want to nullify. Maybe you get a majority somehow on your village board of trustees, but if you as a as the libertarian politician, maybe you got a majority, but you vote because you feel a certain way morally about a rule, but the majority of people in that village aren't agreeing with you on that. It doesn't matter that you voted for it if the town sends or the county sends their goons in.
Right. So it's really going to depend on whether
I
the
think
town is going to let me paint my own shed without, and they're going to decide whether or not to fine me for doing it without their permission.
I mean, also order of precedence. Some of the villages, like you use Suffolk as an example, some of the villages predate the county. They're actually older. Created before the county even existed. So it's like trying to get rid of them might be a tough sell.
well, it sounds like if we got a libertarian into office in a village, okay, they won, now what, right? They're going to need some support to be able to be effective. So what does support look like after winning? Is it training from the LP? Is it legal backup when Albany pressures them? Do you envision villages coordinating with each other to put up a united front?
That would be nice.
In an ideal world, it would be all of those things. And in addition, it really has to be that the people who voted for them support what they're doing. Because if the people who voted for them then support that nullification, it's not just about, oh, we got the libertarian person on the board and then they did the vote, nullified, sorry, big government, he said no. That if the people fundamentally want whatever that thing is, it's going to be a tough sell to try and force the nullification through. You have to build community support. You have to build support from the people that voted for you and even the people that didn't. You have to be a real, like, a public servant, and the things that you're nullifying have to be because you're representing the people who voted for you to be a nullifier. Otherwise, you're gonna be going to war without an army without that.
Right. And we have seen this work. Like, if you run on the platform of not enforcing certain regulations that are just unnecessary or that, like,
Onerous.
unnecessarily onerous. Like, we've seen this work. Like, in our area, like, the local government went after a pumpkin farm, like one of those touristy farms where you go and pick pumpkins and pet animals and stuff. There was such a huge showing at a town council meeting in support of these people that the government backed off. So, yeah, you want to pick things to run on that you know that the public is probably already leaning in the direction of supporting you on.
Or, well, that, and you also want to be working with the Libertarian Party, ideally if you have a county affiliate with them, but also with the state party, to be helping to move the needle on the issues that you want people to care about. I think it's not just about waiting for people to automatically support something. You also want to try and make the case for it. You also want to try and find the people, maybe if they start out as a minority, who feel a certain way, and then put in the work to change hearts and minds. That is a tough process, and it's not something that can really be avoided if a strategy of local elections for nullification is going to be pursued. You have to base build no matter what. I mean, no matter what level of election you try to go for, you have to base build. The idea behind the local strategy, particularly for village, is that the size of base building required, I think, meshes nicely with like our very reduced size and our need to at a level that we have the resources and manpower to directly compete at.
We're doing what guerrilla movements have always done. When you're small, you work out in the villages and the rural areas. You work in the cracks, you organize. And that leads me to the question, what if there are no big L libertarians? Like, let's say voter rolls show 0 registered L's in a target village. Do you recruit liberty-minded independents? Do we ally with Republicans or whatever the minority party is in the area? How does that work? How do we make the guerrilla movement stronger and libertarian branded?
So there isn't a direct answer for that because I think it depends on the village. What I can also say is that, and this is my opinion on it, I think that these types of decisions would need to be more committee-wide or party-wide decisions, maybe county affiliate decisions. But I think that to start with, the procedure of targeting registered Ls within villages is a good starting point for us. And then as we're looking through villages, as we're talking to county affiliates, if we're seriously moving forward with this process, things will start to pop up. People will say, "Oh, I know this is an issue in this village, and this person's fighting for it, and the local machine is crushing them. Maybe they're not a registered L, but we can push them to victory." There are several people who, when we had valid access, who weren't registered Ls, who we pushed to victory, who would not have won without our line, particularly in Suffolk as well. And this person's fighting for it, and the local machine is crushing them. They wouldn't have won without us. Maybe they're not a registered L. We were the margin for them. And they were solidly liberty leaning. And it was a very positive impact that we made by doing it. But the way we found those people was by being serious about the registered Ls so that we were a serious party for them to be engaging.
What kind of training can we provide, or what kind of support can the state party and then maybe county affiliates provide for people who want to get involved?
So if you mean get involved as in help with this research process,
Yep.
we're going to be having, and we haven't decided the date yet, but that will be sent out in an email. We're going to be having a Zoom meeting in which I'll be showing exactly how this research process works. I would invite everyone who is interested to please attend. This is a big undertaking. To some degree, it's a bit of a gamble, but I think it's a gamble that's long overdue.
Well, you call it a gamble. Let me ask, what counts as success? 10 people running? 10 elected? 10 elected who actually blocked something? Just building the volunteer base?
I think that what I would consider a success for this is getting 3 to 5 solid libertarians or liberty leading people who are seriously fighting on a libertarian issue elected at the village level. I would consider that a success. I think that I would love 10. I would love 10. I just don't want, because this is something that really hasn't been attempted in this state before. I don't want to be saying, "Oh, we need double-digit numbers of elected people who all win and then all are able to fight." And then if we only get 5, we call that, "Oh, we only got half of our success rate." I feel like what we really should be aiming for is as much comprehensive coverage of the state's villages as possible, so that we also don't limit ourselves if it turns out that this is something that people get very interested in, that we made sure that we reached out to everyone. That way, maybe we do get those 10 people. But yeah, I would consider 3 to 5 solid victories as a success for this, especially if it happens within the first year.
So it sounds like there would be value even if nobody won. We'd end up with a database of village elections, identified libertarians, and we'd start to build networks. Does that infrastructure matter regardless, even if we don't get anybody actually holding office right away?
I think it heavily matters. And I think at each level of going down from the ideal 5 elected or some amount of elected, let's say, every level going down there has its own form of value in terms of success. So if you're talking, we get multiple people on the ballot, but they don't win, but they make a splash and they seriously change the discussion. I mean, Stephen Ruth from Suffolk County,
he was on our podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes. There are few human beings quite like Stephen Ruth. And I
right,
mean that
he really showed the power of direct action, I think.
Yeah, as he put it, all it takes is a painter's extension rod and a pair of balls.
Well,
I think that
11,000 petition signatures, and how many other people even in the party have been able to do something like that. So it's a matter of getting out there and doing it, and being able to get people to support you and help you do the work. And the more people we can get engaged, the better off all of us will be in and out of the party. So,
Well, let me ask you
And like,
guys, because the central question here is what are we building? Maybe it's all of the things I'm about to mention, but while you were talking, these are what I wrote down. We've got stepping stones, like villages, then towns, then counties, and then real power. We've got parallel structures, because village governance, even as its own end goal, accomplishes liberty for those people who live there. We've also got the training grounds. We're learning how to govern before scaling. And finally, maybe even resistance networks, small scale opposition, where we could maybe nullify. And over time, that could compound. But I think the value proposition is a bit different depending on which of these you think we're actually building here.
I've got one more too.
There's room for all these tactics, though, I think. Like, you're going to need a variety of, you need some people in local office. You're going to need other people building up mutual aid networks and the gray market, I think. So, yeah, you need different types of people doing different things.
I mean, I would say also getting people into the village offices, the local offices, is good for intelligence purposes, for getting info, because these towns have their own little uh, inside things that they want to do and that they're putting out there. And if you are in village office, you can basically start the conversation because you'll have info ahead of time. The biggest problem I see is they come up with these things and it's already decided before it ever gets out to the public. But you can't just go into a village and go like, "Hey, we're just going to do this," because you're going to get a lot of flack from the elected village officials. So there has to be some private conversations that happen first. And if you can get information on what they're thinking about doing, that helps you resist when they actually do stuff and come up with better ideas and come up with their own plans to, that you can get public support for. And if we can get enough issues where we're getting public support, then we can extend that to the towns and to the counties, to say, hey, let's get some people in the town and in the county who can do the same thing, is to let people know what the politicians are thinking about before they can actually get it done. Because I've seen meetings where, I've gone to town meetings where they literally tell you, yeah, this is happening. You're not doing anything about it. And why? Because they've already made the deal behind closed doors. But if you would have had notice a couple of months or a month beforehand, you might have been able to gather up enough resistance to make changes, to make them either change their plans or at least listen to the people that live in those communities. So for me, that's kind of important too.
So, is this what we mean in Section 5 of our platform, where we talk about actively restraining government?
Yes, because the quote is, government will inevitably grow more tyrannical if left unchecked. So how about we do some checking? That would
Right. Do it before they start sending paramilitaries into your town.
Paul, do you have any thoughts for listeners, who want to take the next step, but who heard everything we covered tonight and their head might be spinning a little bit? What's the one action that you would like them to take next so that they can be helped to take the next steps after that?
I would say the one action to be able to help take the next step with us as we embark on this project would be to just let us know that you're interested. The simplest way would be to email me at my LP email, which is pgrindle@lpny.org. In the coming days, there will be a page on our website about this, which will allow you to sign up and put in your contact information to also let us know that you're interested. But the simplest way is to just send me an email, just letting me know you're interested in helping. It doesn't have to be specific. I mean, it can be whatever specific you want, but it doesn't have to be anything other than just letting us know that you want to be a part of this.
And what if you have information on a village election that's coming up or going to be scheduled? Can they email you there?
Absolutely. Can they? Please do. Any amount of information you can provide is less information we have to all collectively go scrounging across the internet for. That also includes context information about maybe a village has a slightly higher vote total, but I don't know. It's it's a red or blue incumbent that never can really get challenged by the other party, but there's enough people there who would back Libertarian to take that incumbent down. Or there's an issue in a village that you feel could be strong to run on, even if all the election mumbo jumbo dynamics are details you don't know. Anything that you have would be extremely useful.
Okay, so that's, you said it's pgrindle@lpny.org?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And let us know, definitely let us know. We can always drop it in comments of what the page is going to be in any form that you can fill out on the LPNY website. If you want to see the LPNY platform, it's lpny.org/platform. And you could look at point number 5, which is basically the catch-all of big government will always want to grow bigger. And we are trying to stop that process.
Anybody have any other thoughts? That's a pretty good one for us to wrap up on, but did anybody have any questions for Paul or concerns that this just isn't glamorous enough?
Well, I see it as you can slow the growth of a tumor, but you can't necessarily make it smaller. And I kind of see running for local office under this current system, you can slow the growth of government. So I think it's definitely worth doing. I don't think it's going to be a long-term fix, but I think it's not to discourage anyone, because I definitely think it's still worth doing.
Well, what do you think about that, Paul?
Oh, I think we lost him for a moment.
Yeah,
but
the
that's all right.
connection is not
Yep, there he is. He's
spotty.
back.
There we go. Paul, I don't know if you heard what Rose just said, but every libertarian is thinking it. She's wondering, is this slowing but not stopping government growth? Like putting a tumor into recession but not curing the cancer. What are your thoughts on that?
And is it worth it?
Is it worth it?
I honestly don't know. And I think that is a reasonable counterpoint and a reasonable, basically the main challenge to this concept is whether or not this is too little of the time that demands much more. I don't think it is, but again, my reason for not thinking that it is too little of the time that demands much more is ultimately something that I can't say for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it allows for, let's say, the start of the local nullification strategy and building it up, particularly tying it into the electoral side of being a political party. I think that it builds up a lot of knowledge. It builds up a bench, builds up skill base, both from the people researching for this project, the people running for office, the people helping those people who run for office. It can build outreach and stuff, but it might be that going to this level is too small. I'm not even saying, though, that people shouldn't aim for bigger things, that they have plans, strategies, ideas on how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm proposing is that I see this as a dimension of this fight that we're not currently engaged in that appears to have a lot more hittable targets.
Right. You can actually win these races.
And I think that it offers a lot of growth opportunity for bigger things And so I would say, as people engage with this project, if you decide that this project is for you, it is good to keep in mind that question of where do we go from here the whole time that you are here.
Hmm.
Otherwise, then yes, it will be too little.
Right. Like I said, I think this could be part of a multi-pronged strategy. And at the very least, even if you don't win, even if you don't manage to do much in office because you've got too much opposition, at the very least, you may still be able to recruit like-minded individuals who are worth networking with. Like, what we need now is we need networking. We need to find enough people who think like us, who we can form our counter economy with, and who we'd actually want to be friends with in the event that the entire system comes crashing down, which is looking increasingly like a possibility that could happen. Yes.
Well, you've given us a lot of food for thought tonight, Paul. And, riffing off of what you just said, I think before we wrap up tonight, I want to be direct with our listeners. I know a lot of you are exhausted. You've watched Albany and Washington pass the same bad policies over and over with slightly different names. You've maybe even testified at hearings where they don't listen, or you've contacted representatives who don't seem to care. And you're starting to wonder if working within the system is just performative resistance, theater designed to make you feel like you have a voice while the outcome was already decided. And honestly, as Paul says, that's a legitimate concern. I too feel like voting and going through the other motions can basically be a child's toy steering wheel. I agree, the system is broken in a lot of ways. Courts defer to Albany, the legislature ignores local opposition, and then they find ways to legalize making them irrelevant. The structural incentives across the board all point towards centralization. But here's what I think after listening to you, Paul. The system isn't necessarily completely broken. Not yet. I mean, I know it's at a higher level than Village, but, Don Clavin and 200 local officials killed the housing compact. Anthony Picenti told New York City no and made it stick. Hell, I remember sheriffs in some New York counties who refused to enforce COVID mandates that the governor demanded, and nothing happened to them. And of course, there's Ruth, let's not forget him. Now, none of that seems like a toy steering wheel to me. That's real power being exercised by people in the right positions at the right time. So I guess the question isn't whether the system can be used to restrain government. We discussed real examples where it was. The question is, can we do it consistently? Can we do it strategically? And more importantly, can we do it before it's too late? And I don't know the answer to that.
Here's the thing, though. Okay, we know if we don't try to do it, okay, maybe we're Don Quixote tilting at windmills for no reason. But if we don't do anything, we know what the outcome's going to be. So the only chance you have to change that outcome is to try to do something about it. Win or lose, if you don't make the effort, then you truly have lost. You've lost, and you've lost in the worst possible way because you haven't tried. So,
I agree.
That's why, so many people try to make fun of libertarians. They try to make fun of us, tilting at windmills and trying to fight for liberty across the board. And the thing is, we're doing it because what else is there? Are we just going to go along and shout rah rah at one side or another side while while Rome is burning around our ears? Or do we try and do something to slow it down and or prevent it? And that's...
It sounds like none of us knows whether it will work, but it's worth trying. Here's what I do know. I mean, if we abandon the institutional tools that we still have because we've decided they're useless,
we'll stop having access to them pretty fast.
Pretty much, and that guarantees the system stops working. And then what, right? Because like you were saying, Bob, I mean, I'll tell you what I'm seeing out there right now. I mean, just in the headlines, people on both sides of every issue are frankly starting to conclude that violence is necessary. I mean, those in power are increasingly willing to use force and fear to get their way, and those out of power, they're not really any better. They just want to use mob violence to get into power, which just then gives them legitimate authority to keep using violence, this time from supporters in uniforms.
And where does
And
that
either
go?
way, right, at that point, the system is so broken that the only option left is to tear it down. And I guess maybe that's exactly what someone somewhere wants, shaking the jar until the ants fight each other might be the plan. Because as long as we're fighting each other, we're not paying attention to who's doing the shaking. And Paul, to your point, I think your approach is different. It's not naive. It's not pretending the system is fine. It's saying, here are the tools we still have. Here are the positions that still matter. Let's use them while we can. And that's village trustees and planning boards and zoning commissions and maybe even school boards, town councils, and maybe eventually county legislatures. And I know these aren't glamorous positions, and you won't get on cable news holding those offices. You'll sit through boring meetings. You'll get outvoted sometimes. You'll fight battles that feel too small to matter. But you'll also be the person who can say no when Albany or Washington comes calling. You'll be the one who can organize resistance before the bill passes instead of filing lawsuits after, although you can do that too. You'll be in the room when decisions get made instead of outside the room complaining about them. And if you're not that person, you can be the support network behind that person, making them strong, effective, and well-informed. That's what Section 5 of our platform means. It is the responsibility of citizens, you, to actively restrain the government, its powers, and its agents from subverting the rights of the people, your rights. Not to complain about government, not to wait for someone else to fix it, to actively, personally restrain it. And if this doesn't work, if we try Paul's approach and it fails, then at least we'll know. We'll know we tried everything peaceful. We'll know we used every institutional tool available. We'll know we didn't hand them the victory without making them work for it. And, as Rose pointed out, we'll have built networks. We'll have found the liberty-minded people in our communities. We'll have learned who we can count on. All the things we already preach on this show about resilience and independence, those don't go away just because you're also on a planning board. But if we don't try, if we decide the system is hopeless without actually testing whether Paul's right, then we've made a choice. We've chosen to let the last institutional lines of defense fail without even attempting to man the trenches. And once those are gone, once every peaceful option has been exhausted or abandoned, then we're talking about things that'll get us banned from social media. So here's what I'm asking. Contact your county LP affiliate, or just contact us directly here at the show, or go directly to Mr. Grindle. You can find the info in the credits and in the show notes, and on the LPNY website, which is lpny.org. When you contact us, ask what local positions are coming up. Planning boards, village trustees, zoning commissions, or tell us of ones you know are coming up, or ask how you can help us do the research. The point is, many of these aren't even contested races. You could literally be the only person running. If you've got the time and the willingness to show up to meetings, you could be the next Don Clavin or the next Anthony Picenti, the person who says no and makes it stick. And we'll help you. Because if we could stand together and say no and make it stick, but we don't even try, that's on us. And we'll have failed our own personal liberty test. All right, that's the show. Thanks for listening. And thanks for giving a damn.
Where will you be when the order is given to censor your mind as free speech is forbidden, as martyrs for peace from the world will be driven away by the sound of a bellowing thunder and choke on the blood of a dream going under? As arrogant men tear up our Constitution, and from every direction we cry revolution, standing together and without permission, soldiers for truth in the war of attrition, the love of our country as our ammunition. I find strange, for I know that